Good morning, USA time, Pacific time. It's 9 a.m. I want to welcome the Youngevity Nation from around the world. I know we have people from all over the globe, and just so proud of each and every one of you. This is going to be a great year. Happy New Year and all that stuff. And we have an opportunity to save our families, to save our neighbors' families. We have the opportunity to save our countries, and thus doing, we're going to be able to save the population of the world. Knowledge is power, of course, and you have to take action. I'm so very proud of our Youngevity Nation for doing both, becoming students of the information and also taking action. Well, the thing I want to cover today is the fact that there's thousands and thousands of failed medical theories every century, and the 20th century and 21st century are no different. The thing you have to appreciate is that medical experts all over the world have now told us, and governments all over the world have now told us, that in the industrialized world, our children will be the first children that do not live as long as their parents. That is a horrible prediction of catastrophic proportions. Can you imagine every couple on earth standing at a gravesite burying their kids? That'll be the end of humanity. And so we have to look at what's going on here. Why is all this happening with all the technology we have in the medical industry, yet our children will be the first generation that do not live as long as their parents? Well, that's because we're missing the raw materials. We're going to talk about the great killer diseases: obesity, diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, kidney failure, things like dementias, Alzheimer's disease. These things are all preventable, and they're all reversible. It's an amazing thing that we've gotten off on the rails. We've gotten off of the rails, and there's so many diseases that are just simple nutritional deficiency diseases that we jumped on the wrong theory and thought they were genetic. And as a result, we went off in the wrong direction, and we have this huge problem. In fact, UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles, just came out last year and said that in California alone, 55% of adults in California are either type 2 diabetics or are pre-diabetics. And then the word is out that in California, obesity is just skyrocketing. It's actually an epidemic of obesity. What is going on here? People exercise, they eat well, and yet obesity is going crazy. Well, our basic problem is that technology has stolen things from us. There's wonders in technology. I mean, these things are scientific miracles. It's all the things we're able to do through technology, electricity, the media, okay, of all kinds, social media, and all the things we can do there, but yet we're missing the basic things of life. All vertebrates, whether you're a hummingbird or a fish or a turtle or an anaconda snake, a human being, a rat, if you're a flamingo, if you're an elephant, you're a giraffe, you're a horse, a pig, a chicken, we all need the same things. We all need oxygen, we all need water, we need 90 essential nutrients, 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. And of course, the thing that alerted me to all this was a big NIH study, National Institutes of Health study that I did. It was a 10-year study starting in 1967, the Center for the Biology of Natural Systems in St. Louis, Washington University, Shaw's Botanical Gardens, and Barnes Hospital, and the St. Louis Zoo. Over a period of 10 years, they did over 20,000 autopsies, 17,000 some change, of over 454 species of animals and 3,000 humans. 10 million chemistries with special stains, looking for pollution as the cause of or contributor to deaths from natural causes. Back in the 60s, everybody knew the Earth was going to end in 2 weeks from pollution, and so pollution was a grave concern. And I was chosen to be the pathologist on the project because in 1991, when I was 21 years old, a graduate student in pathology, I actually ran into the first mass die-off in America from pollution. It was able to be diagnosed and tracked down, got it published, and gave it to people who were my mentors around the world. And when the time came, when they got a big grant to study pollution and the causes of death in zoo animals and people who lived in the cities around these big zoos, in the big cities, they said, well, there's only one guy who can be the pathologist on this program, and that's Wallach, because he wrote the first paper on a mass die-off in America from pollution. Make a long story short, what we found out was that every vertebrate, regardless of what species or family we're from, every vertebrate that has the same deficiency will get the same disease. That was a landmark finding, and as a result, the book that came out of that 1,200-page book with all that data is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. Very, very proud of those findings. Well, nobody else is really translating that into real life. And again, to make a long story short, I was able to begin translating this into real life about 1977 when I ran into the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis, a disease thought to be genetically transmitted. And this was at the Yerkes Primate Center in Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And did all my due diligence, found that it was actually an environmental problem because there was 24 other baby monkeys that had the cystic fibrosis, and none of them were genetically related to each other. And because of my background with this big project, the Center for Biology of Natural Systems, I knew that it had to be an environmental problem. Looked around, found the cause of cystic fibrosis. Got it all written up, ready for publication, was very excited about it. And Emory University fired me. They said, Wallach, you must be sniffing glue because everybody knows that cystic fibrosis is a genetic disease. Well, no. Why don't you challenge me like you would a PhD student and let me give you my data to back up my findings. And if I can actually answer your questions properly, we can get grants and we'll go ahead and save a lot of kids. If I can't answer your questions properly, respond properly, go ahead and fire me. And no, we'd be embarrassed to tears, and so they terminated me. And make a long story short again, went back to school, became a naturopathic physician so I could treat those kids myself. That was kind of the beginning of maybe really seriously using this information for human cultures and human populations. And again, let's start out with some of the big ones. Let's look at obesity, a worldwide problem. And obesity, the theory has been for 125 years that we are obese because we eat too much and don't exercise enough. That's been the theory for 125 years. And following that theory, the U.S., America, became the #1 obese nation in the world. We have more diets that are on TV, every kind of diet you can think of. Pre-fab diets, you just order them, they feed you every meal, they count your calories for you. You don't have to do anything except just eat and lose all this weight. But it's been a failure because if you go back to normal life, you gain all the weight back because they haven't dealt with the nutritional deficiency piece. In fact, obesity has nothing to do with lack of exercise and eating too much. In fact, obesity is caused by a nutritional deficiency of one or more nutrients out of a class of nutrients. And if there's 3 of them, if you have any one of those missing, what happens is you'll be the 300-pound, 400-pound, 600-pound person. Women who, of course, don't supplement with these things during pregnancy, they will gain what they call baby weight, baby fat, and 30, 40, 50 years later, they still are 60 pounds overweight with that baby fat for having 2, 3, 4, 5 kids because they haven't dealt with the nutritional deficiency piece. America is the #1 obese nation, not because of lack of exercise and eating too much, but because of nutritional deficiencies. And so we developed a program by which you supplement with all 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. And one of the secrets here is you have to maximize your absorption. You have to eliminate all causes of malabsorption. And so you can get up into the 90s when it comes to percentages of absorption. And you'll begin to lose a ½ pound to 2 pounds of body weight a day in a healthful way. And the magic is you'll never gain the weight back as long as you stay on the 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. We've been doing this commercially for 40 years. It's a very, very simple thing, and it never fails. It never fails. Well, closely related is type 2 diabetes. Closely related is type 2 diabetes. They kind of run together sometimes, obesity and diabetes. And a lot of doctors will kind of say, well, diabetes kind of is a partial cause of obesity. Obesity is kind of a partial cause of diabetes, and they kind of run together. Well, people can get 8, 9, 10 different diseases. They'll have high blood pressure, arthritis, congestive heart failure. They can have reflux, bacterial degeneration, low back problems, fibromyalgia, and these are all nutritional deficiency diseases because it's not unusual for people to be deficient in 3, 4, 8, 10 different nutrients when you can't absorb things and you're eating food that is nutritionally deficient. The reason why people are obese is the nutrients that are necessary to prevent and reverse obesity are no longer found in optimal amounts in your foods. Some cases are not there at all. Same way with diabetes. We've known now, today, for 85 years, that type 2 diabetes is actually a deficiency of a single nutrient. It's not a genetically transmitted disease. Very simple nutritional deficiency disease. We've eliminated it in every vertebrate you can think of. except of course humanity, because the medical systems all over the world still believe that type 2 diabetes is a genetic disease. It's not. Well, it's familial. Well, it could be familial because of a couple of reasons. Number one, people pass on gluten intolerances, for instance, could be a cause of malabsorption. And you live in a place that has very low amounts or none of that nutrient that's necessary to prevent and reverse diabetes. So you're malabsorbing, you have extremely low amounts in your food, that's a recipe for getting type 2 diabetes. And so you can have generation after generation after generation with type 2 diabetes, and it has nothing to do with genetics. Okay, it has to do with gluten intolerance, a malabsorption problem, and lack of these nutrients, or at least reduced amount of these nutrients in the food. So you supplement with the nutrients, all 90 essential nutrients, a little bit of extra of that secret sauce for diabetes, and then you get rid of all the bad stuff: fried foods, processed meats, oils. It means olive oil, coconut oil, margarines, mayonnaise, filters, and cooking oils, and gluten. And you're going to eliminate inflammation, which makes type 2 diabetes worse. High sugar levels make type 2 diabetes worse, and you get inflammation inside your arteries. You get arteriosclerosis and atherosclerosis from the elevated sugar levels of uncontrolled diabetes, or eating lots of sneak eating sugar because you're using medication to keep your blood sugar under control, but you're still getting high levels during the night when you're sleeping of blood sugar because you're eating lots of sugar. Sugar is a very inflammatory thing. Will contribute to artery disease, heart disease, blindness, macular degeneration, kidney failure, and so on. And they say, oh, these are common complications of type 2 diabetes. That's true, but because that's how people eat and they don't manage themselves properly, they don't get rid of the disease. Type 2 diabetes is a nutritional deficiency disease that's easily gotten rid of, but you do have to stay on a diet that maximizes absorption. You do have to supplement with all 90 essential nutrients, because those nutrients are found in extremely varying amounts in locations. And if you live in a place where there's little or none, it doesn't matter how much you spend on food. Doesn't matter how much you spend on food, you'll find that you're not going to make any progress. You have to supplement. The same way with kids. Remember, our kids will be the first generation in the industrialized world that do not live as long as their parents. Let me tell you that if we do not supplement these kids, you will be standing at graveside burying them. I can't imagine a more horrible thing. Let's just look at Princess Leia. Carrie Fisher died of a coronary thrombosis, a blood clot in the coronary artery in an airplane, okay, at age 60. 3 days later, as she was burying her daughter, Debbie Reynolds, very famous in her own right, dies of a thrombotic stroke, a blood clot in the brain. Well, the blood clot in the brain in Debbie Reynolds and the blood clot in the coronary arteries in Carrie Fisher are all caused by the same deficiency. Okay? That's a deficiency disease, and it could be malabsorption, and none in the diet, or none in the diet, all kinds of things going on there. They were neighbors, they were very close, and did many, many things together, ate the same way, and I'm sure neither of them supplemented appropriately. If they did, they certainly had a bad absorption problem, and resulted in the death of both of them. And it's very typical. Debbie Reynolds died whether it was hours or a day, half a day, whatever it was, after she buried her daughter. And just think of Steve Jobs' parents. They buried him at age 56. Satoru Iwata, another billionaire, CEO of Nintendo, they buried him at age 55. Unfortunately, Vice President Joe Biden buried his son Beau at age 46. Past President Jimmy Carter buried his grandson Matthew at age 28. The King of Dubai buried his trillionaire son at age 33. Dies of a cardiomyopathy heart attack while he's running. You look at pictures of him, he was a fitness buff. So it doesn't matter how politically connected you are. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are. It doesn't matter how fit you are. If you're missing these nutrients, you're going to die early. We have to supplement, maximize our nutrition. This comes with education. People, of course, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago didn't know what was going on when it came to nutrition, but they knew that certain areas of the world people lived longer, and they would try to move in that direction. If they couldn't, they would move and look for places where people could live longer. Animals lived a long time, and they would pay attention to that. And it turns out that nutritional minerals, for instance, which make up 2/3 of the 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids, nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. They occur in veins like chocolate and chocolate ripple ice cream. Some places have 3 elements and minerals. Some places have 5. Some have 18. Some have 25. Some have 40, and so on. And the ones that have the fewest have the shortest lifespans and get all kinds of terrible diseases. The ones that have the most have longer lifespans and have fewer of these terrible diseases. It's just that simple. Directly related to the number of minerals in the soil. Plants can make carbon compounds. They take carbon dioxide out of the air, and they can make carbon compounds such as vitamins and amino acids and fatty acids. That's why we eat those things. We can get those nutrients by eating plants that are well nourished. But sometimes they need these minerals out of the soil to be able to make the carbon compounds. So there's kind of an intermixing there. Well, the problem came at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, September 4th, 1882. Environmentalists and ecologists and professors of agriculture and professors of medicine and people who work for governments all over the world will blame bad farming practices for our soils being depleted of nutrients. That's certainly not true. Our soils are depleted of nutrients because of technology. How'd that work? Well, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, September 4th, 1882, Thomas Edison pulled the switch in the first commercial electric generating plant on Pearl Street in New York City in the bluff overlooking the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, that was impactful because prior to that moment, the universal fuel around the world was wood. The universal fertilizer was wood ashes that people put into their gardens. And it turns out that wood ashes are not wood ashes. 95 to 98% of what we call wood ashes, the powder that's left when you burn wood for fuel, is actually the minerals that the tree had sucked up out of the ground. You burn the wood, and the powder that's left is 95 to 98% minerals. There's a little bit of carbon left over, so the powder might be gray or black as a result of how much carbon is left in that powder, which is really plant minerals. And not only did it drive growth and more production in the plants that were fertilized with these wood ashes, but also the plants would store those minerals within their own grain and fruit and vegetables and nuts and so on. And people would eat these things, and unknowingly they would get their minerals in that fashion. Once we switched over to electricity and we fueled our homes with electricity, there's no more wood ashes to put in the garden. And people tried rotating crops. Well, that didn't work very well, rotating crops, because you still have the same lack of mineral nutrients in the soil. They knew they were in trouble in 1936 because before that they had the Great Depression, they had the Dust Bowl in America, and the soil was dying all over the earth. And they knew the nutrients were deficient in the soil, and they blamed it on poor farming practices. They blamed it on poor farming practices as opposed to blaming it on technology. Technology is what hurt us. Then you look at a greater, wider problem, and that is that the most successful cultures on earth always grew up around rivers and river bottoms and floodplains. We're talking about the Nile River with Egypt. We're talking about the Ganges River in India. We're talking about the Thames River in London, England. We're talking about the Volga River in Russia. We're talking about the Rhine River in Germany. We're talking about the Yalu River in China. And so it's these great rivers where they would flood, and there's minor rivers that would flood every spring. When the floodwaters receded, would leave silt behind, and silt was minerals from mountains hundreds, maybe thousands of miles upstream. Farmers didn't push that off to the side before they planted. They would plow it in and renew the mineral content of the soil that had been done every spring for thousands and thousands of years before the appearance of man. Now, the interesting thing about this is that nobody knew this, yet today nobody knows this. And people say, well, just eat well, you're going to get everything you need. That is absolutely not true. Plants cannot manufacture minerals, which make up 2/3 of the 90 essential nutrients. 60 out of the 90 essential nutrients are things we need, minerals and elements we need. Plants cannot make them. They must have them in the soil, not necessarily for themselves, because a plant only needs 3 elements to grow properly and give seeds to the next generation. We're talking about NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, that plants will give you a good yield, make good seeds for the next generation. You eat those plants, they look good, they taste good, they fit everybody's ideal of what looks good and tastes good, and yet you're 57 elements short for your own use. And so we have a problem here. we must supplement, otherwise people will be standing at graveside burying their kids. That's well agreed upon. Well, we've already looked at two diseases easily prevented and easily reversed, obesity and diabetes. Let's look at another one, heart disease, cardiovascular disease. Congestive heart failure is a very common disease throughout the world. And congestive heart failure is a deficiency of a single vitamin. We've known that for 300 years. It was discovered by a Japanese naval surgeon 300 years ago. A very, very simple vitamin deficiency. You get rid of all the bad stuff, the fried foods, the processed meats, the oils, the gluten, in this case sugar, which makes the deficiency of that vitamin worse. Got to get rid of the sugar. And then you supplement with all 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids, and you give a little bit of extra of that secret sauce that has more of that vitamin. You'll be amazed at how quickly people are able to reduce their medication for their maintenance of congestive heart failure. Many of them are able to, within weeks, eliminate all medication, go back to a normal life. Well, how long do they have to stay on the diet and the 90 essential nutrients plus a little extra of that secret sauce? Well, for life, forever. Okay, because the nutrients are missing in the soil and so forth. And I mean, I have seen literally thousands of instances where people are able to significantly reduce their medication or completely wean off their medication and go back to normal life. Congestive heart failure is a very simple nutritional deficiency, easy to prevent, easy to reverse. Then cardiomyopathy heart disease, sudden heart death. We see this in athletes. 20,000 young athletes die each year in America alone, sudden heart death. You know, we're talking 5 or 6 year olds in the Pee Wee leagues and the Pop Warner leagues, all the way up to grade school, junior high, high school, university, Olympic athletes, professional athletes. This is caused by deficiency of a single mineral. I've personally done 1,700 autopsies on kids under the age of 10 that have died of this disease, cardiomyopathy heart disease. In China it's called Kishan disease. And one has the most terrible study I've ever done, because we're talking about 1,700 kids died of this sudden heart disease, deficiency of a single mineral. But on the other hand, it gave us an enormous amount of information to save millions of kids. Okay? And so if you take the 90 essential nutrients and you throw in these secret sauces to young couples who are getting engaged, they're dating seriously, they're getting married, and you give them the 90 essential nutrients instead of a $500 gift certificate, you'll significantly reduce the risk of all birth defects, including things that happen, you know, the kids are born, are in trouble, and by the time they're 10 years old, they have congestive heart failure, might have already died from cardiomyopathy heart disease, and they've got type 2 diabetes now, and they're only 10 years old, not type 1, but type 2, and they're obese, they're 12 years old, and they're, 300 pounds. That's because they have a malabsorption problem. And so you have to get them off all the bad stuff. No fried foods, no processed meats. With nitrates, nitrites, we're talking about deli slices, sandwich meats, sausage, ham, bacon, bologna, salami, pastrami, pepperoni, jerky, corned beef spam, chorizo, that kind of stuff. You also have to get them off of oils. That means no microwave popcorn, no theater popcorn. You got to get them off of all olive oil, coconut oil, margarines, mayonnaise, substitute cooking oils, because they oxidize in just a few minutes after the squeeze out of the seeds and out of the fruit, out of the fish, wherever you're getting these oils from. They oxidize, turn into trans fats, heterocyclamines, and acrylamides, which increase your risk of coronary artery disease, vascular dementia, artery disease all over the body, also increase your risk of kidney failure and the need for dialysis, increase the risk of heart attacks. It's just an awful thing to behold, and also increase your risk of cancer. I said that in 1971, and they agreed. The World Health Organization came out in 2001 and said, Wallach was correct. They came out again in 2015 said, hey, all these processed meats increase your risk of cancer, the same as smoking a couple of packs of cigarettes a day. What if you smoke a couple of packs of cigarettes a day and take these processed meats? You're going to get cancer. Cancer is a self-inflicted disease, totally preventable. So I urge you to be mindful of these things. Of course, this is all in our CDs, all in our DVDs, it's in the books, and we have 14 books written for the public. The newest one is Epigenetics, The Death of the Genetic Theory of Disease Transmission. It's been a bestseller several times in Amazon. Every time I get on an event like this, and literally millions of people hear the information, they run out and get the book, whether it's Epigenetics, The Death of the Genetic Theory of Disease Transmission, or if it's something like Hell's Kitchen, which talks about how to prevent and reverse obesity and type 2 diabetes, or Rare Earth Cures, which goes into serious diseases that are caused by mineral deficiencies, and it tells the story of how electricity killed the nutritional levels in our soil because we no longer had wood ashes when we went to electricity. And really was honored to be able to figure this out and teach people why they need to supplement, why they have to supplement if they're going to save their kids, if they're going to add 25 to 50 healthy years to their own life. Equally or even more important to add 25 to 50 healthy years to the lives of their kids. Well, let's look at another series of diseases. Let's look at dementia. Let's look at Alzheimer's disease, of course. There's 5 major dementias. There's vascular dementia, caused by the same thing that causes coronary artery disease, inflammation in the arteries in your brain. It's not cholesterol that plugs your arteries. It's actually inflammation. And this is caused by, again, eating fried foods, processed meats, oils, and gluten. Got to get rid of those. And then you have to support healthy blood flow into the brain. And we're looking at vascular dementia. You're looking at something that actually is extremely common, and this was one of the first ones that people began to recognize, vascular dementia, because you could see that at autopsy and people were familiar with it. And not enough oxygen, not enough food to the brain, and people just become befuddled and they reach a certain level of dementia. And so we actually have a secret sauce, which we'll talk about in a minute for that. But I like to approach nutritionally all 5 dementias at the same time, because there's no rule that says you can only have one dementia at a time. I've seen literally thousands of people that have all 5 dementias. Many doctors will call them all Alzheimer's disease because the insurance codes will pay the most for Alzheimer's disease, and they just treat for Alzheimer's disease, and so it never works out, and they get to be treating these people for the remainder of their lives, which sometimes not very long. Well, Alzheimer's disease appeared on the scene almost 48 years ago now. Alzheimer's disease was actually started by a sales campaign to sell a product. Let's go back to 1901 when the German Navy went to a chemist from the University of Berlin in Germany, guy by the name of Wilhelm Norman. He said, "Sir, we need a smokeless synthetic lubricant for diesel engines for German submarines." And by 1904, Professor Wilhelm Norman had accomplished this. After the First World War was over, they didn't need it anymore, so he was allowed to sell his patent to a British soap manufacturing company in the 20s, and he couldn't, or they couldn't sell their soap. Even though it was a great quality soap, they couldn't sell it because everybody's making their own soap. So to make a long story short, by the 40s, they sold this patent to Procter & Gamble in the United States, great company, and they couldn't sell their soap because everybody's making their own soap. I can remember in the early 40s making soap with Grandma and Mom and myself in the early 40s. And so they were a failure at using this diesel engine lubricant, synthetic and smokeless, meant for German submarines, as a soap. So they decided to sell it as a cooking chutney. And they made this beautiful cooking chutney called Crisco, and it was in a can. It was consistent, convenient. Didn't have to have a can full of melted bacon grease in the back of the stove for cooking, and it was predictable. And yet they couldn't sell it very well. They weren't making any money. They're going broke selling this stuff, as this is Procter & Gamble. So a guy by the name of Ansel Keys, who's a professor of medicine at the University of Minnesota, went to a big advertising firm and said, "Hey, how do we sell this stuff?" And he said, "Oh, it's very easy. You got to demonize them and say Grandma will be killing her kids and grandkids and sisters and brothers by cooking with lard, butter, cream, and eggs, and should switch over to this new product, which is a better way to cook, a healthier way to cook, called Crisco." They were having a struggle at that. They couldn't do that consistently, not quite making a profit. And so they went back to this advertising firm and saying, "Well, we're not having much luck here. We got to really demonize this stuff." So they did an analysis of lard, butter, cream, and egg and found 2 common threads, cholesterol and saturated fat. They began to demonize cholesterol and saturated fat. And they got to be profitable, but it wasn't magic. It wasn't taking over the world. And so what happened here was that Procter & Gamble said, "Okay, we got to do something else." So they go to the advertising company again. They say, "Well, what do we do?" I said, "Well, you have to give them a place that's better than what they're doing. So grandma would give up what 18 generations of grandmas have been doing, lard, butter, cream, and eggs, and go to this new stuff, Crisco. And they said you have to really lift up Crisco like it's something from heaven, church music, a lot of butterflies, and that began to make things profitable. Well, about that time, egg beaters appeared on the scene, margarine appeared on the scene to replace butter, oils began to appear on the scene to replace lard, because they didn't have high levels or any cholesterol and saturated fat. Well, we began to see new diseases. Low T, low testosterone, ED, erectile dysfunction, menopause at 35 instead of 65, adrenal exhaustion. And that's because estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and adrenal hormones are part of a class of hormones called steroid hormones. 95% of their physical weight is cholesterol. And no matter how good your genes are, if you don't have the cholesterol as a raw material to make those hormones, you don't make the hormones. And so pharmaceutical companies began to make billions of dollars. They're making billions of dollars selling Premarin, which is made from horse urine, first synthetic female hormone, estrogen. And then they're making billions of dollars selling Viagra, Cialis. Okay? You see what's happening here? And they were just having the time of their lives making billions of dollars selling these things. Then they started slapping themselves around, looking in the mirror and slapping themselves. We are very stupid. Calling themselves stupid. We're telling people how to lower their cholesterol for free. So they came up with a class of drugs called, you got it, statin drugs to lower cholesterol. And now each year they make over $1 trillion retail sales from selling statin drugs throughout the industrialized world. Over $1 trillion in sales of statin drugs. Because they didn't want to give away the information for free, and so they came up with a product called statin drugs. Well, within 2 years, a new disease popped up called Alzheimer's disease, which had never appeared before, even by another name, about 48 years ago. And today, guess what? Alzheimer's disease is the number 4 cause of death. 48 years ago, it didn't exist. Today's the number 4 cause of death in people in the industrialized world. And even in the U.S., the FDA, a couple of years ago, came out with an urgent stop email sent out to every licensed doctor. Stop writing prescriptions for statin drugs. Stop telling people to get on cholesterol-restricted diets. Otherwise, you'll increase their risk of type 2 diabetes by 52% and Alzheimer's disease by almost 100%. Doctors continue because there's so much money involved in writing prescriptions for statin drugs and in treating low T, ED, early menopause, and adrenal exhaustion. And also certainly treating Alzheimer's disease now and other dimensions. And this is a horrible, horrible, horrible story. Alzheimer's disease, actual double-blind randomized studies in human beings. 5,000 people over a 10-year period. They all came from the same country, Scotland. They all were the same religion. They all ate the same diet. They all lived in the same valley. They all were the same farmers. All ate the same way. They gave 2,500 of this 5,000 a supplement. They gave the other 2,500 in that study a dummy pill. At the end of the study, just supplementing with 2 nutrients. They reduced the risk of Alzheimer's disease in the study group by 78% over the control group. If they had given all 90 essential nutrients and eliminated a few things, they would have eliminated Alzheimer's disease in the study group by 100%. It's very, very interesting. Okay? And these are the sort of things, again, you'll find in the book Epigenetics, The Death of the Genetic Theory of Disease Transmission, the book Rare Earths and Cures, the book Immortality, the book, of course, Dead Doctors Lie is legendary. And I urge you to get these things, become a student of the information, get the CDs, listen to them as you're driving around, get your families together, get family meetings once a week for 15 to 30 minutes, listen to this stuff, share the information, because it flies in the face of current medical theories. And people say, well, I have to ask my doctor about this because what you're saying doesn't make sense. And of course, the doctor usually has the social credibility and power to convince people to keep doing the pharmaceuticals rather than doing the nutrients. So it's going to take some effort on our part to be able to maximize our success and save as many of our families as we can. Let's look at another one. let's look at arthritis. Osteopenia, osteoporosis, arthritis. Most of you remember back, say, 50, 60 years ago, maybe even 70 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, even today in some countries, in some places in the United States, that doctors will say, look, osteoporosis occurs in women because they go through menopause, they don't make enough estrogen, and so they have to get these estrogen, either the shots or the patches or the pills, so they can maintain their minerals in their bones, their calcium in their bones. Well, in 1971, because of all those autopsies, the big program, the Center for the Biology of Natural Systems, I found that men had osteopenia, osteoporosis, and arthritis at the same percentages that women did. In fact, the osteoporosis in men was actually more severe than it was in women. And everybody said, Wallach, you must be sniffing glue. That can't be right. And laughed at me and laughed at me. Well, again, Harvard Medical School came out in 2001 and said, hey, men get osteoporosis at the same rate as women. You see, osteoporosis and osteopenia and arthritis are vitamin and mineral deficiency diseases. And these nutrients are no longer found in optimal amounts in our food. Sometimes they're just totally missing in the foods. And also, people don't go out in the sun anymore. Everybody stays inside and works on their social media devices and so forth. Nobody's outside picking weeds in the garden. Nobody's out mowing the lawn. Nobody's out watching their sheep, so to speak, and hanging laundry out in the sun and so forth. So nobody's getting any sunshine. And so in addition to the 90 essential nutrients, they're going to need extra secret sauces. In this case, they're going to need extra vitamin D3. We have lots of vitamin D2 in multiple vitamins, but of course, medical says, well, you can't have more than 400 international units of vitamin D2 because otherwise you can calcify your whole body. And so that's kind of been a lid on our source of vitamin D3 over the years. And now doctors write prescriptions for 60,000 units a day. And so I'm urging you, of course, we have the sprays and we have the capsules of vitamin D3. I take in about 20,000 international units of vitamin D3 a day just from our own supplements and things because I spend so much time inside doing events like we're doing here today and so forth. Well, the nice thing about osteopenia, osteoporosis, and arthritis is they're totally preventable and totally reversible. Well, my doctor says I need a double knee replacement. That's not true. I'll give you a true story which represents the peak of literally millions of people we've dealt with arthritis and osteopenia. And this was Andy Young, former ambassador to the United Nations underneath the presidency of Jimmy Carter, mayor of Atlanta, several terms. He was also one of the generals, if you will, in Dr. King's army when it came to the great mission to get equality amongst peoples in America and certainly the world. Okay, and these great marches and things. And I was talking to Andy Young about diseases that are thought to be genetic in the African American community in America and industrialized world and Africa, one of which was sickle cell anemia. And I found sickle cell anemia in deer and antelope and hummingbirds and things like that. And so I knew that it wasn't a genetic disease in people. It turns out that sickle cell anemia is a birth defect of the bone marrow in the early stages of the embryonic life when the bone marrow cells are forming that make hemoglobin. And they're dysfunctional, and so they form dysfunctional hemoglobin. It's called sickle cell anemia in the African American population. The same disease is called thalassemia in the white population because you can't have a black gene in a white guy and a white gene in a black guy, so they gave them two different names in the two different populations. And it's totally preventable. You can take an animal with sickle cell anemia, male and female, and have them have 25, 30, 40, 50 babies, and you give them the 90 essential nutrients appropriate for their body weights. You'll never have a baby born or hatched with sickle cell anemia. If it was genetic, every baby would be born, when the male and the female both have sickle cell anemia, everyone would be born with sickle cell anemia. We can totally prevent it by supplementation, particularly to the female, for say 6 months prior to pregnancy, and then there'll never be another case of sickle cell anemia or thalassemia. And I was talking to Andy Young about this, and I noticed he was limping. I said, Mr. Ambassador, with all due respect, why are you limping? He said, well, I got bone arthritis. I've had it for 20 years. I've been on, 9 painkillers over these years. 3 of them are opioids. I'm getting addicted. And Emory University said the only thing left for me, because these painkillers aren't working anymore, is double knee replacement. I said, sir, with all due respect, that's not true. Give me 90 days and I can rebuild that. And he said, no, these are the greatest surgeons on earth. And they said, I have to have the surgery. I said, well, sir, let's look at this. You're in your 70s, and if I fail you, you could always go get your surgery. If you go do the surgery, you can get infections, have to amputate your legs, or maybe die from the infections, might die from an anesthetic accident. I can't help you then. And so he delayed his surgery, was able to rebuild the cartilage in his knees, you know, be able to go out and play golf again. And so we became fast friends, and he was able to introduce me to many, many people in governments and also entertainers and sports figures and so forth who had various problems, were able to solve them, whether they were athletes, Olympic athletes, professional athletes of all kinds, and again, entertainers and very famous people in governments around the world. And so everybody, I believe, should be on the 90 essential nutrients before you get sick. And then you're going to significantly reduce the risk of getting sick. All right? You stay away from the bad things, and it will increase your ability to avoid these diseases because you're increasing your ability to absorb nutrients, you're supplementing, and any nutrients you get from your food will be value added. And this is a crazy thing, okay? Again, value added, as opposed to hoping and praying that everything you need is in your food. In animals, of course, to maximize their genetic potential for egg production, weight gain in the feedlots, milk production, longevity, having healthy babies without birth defects, we level the playing field by giving each animal their little alfalfa pellets, or canned dog food, all 90 essential nutrients, and we have tripled the lifespans of animals in the last 60 years using that system. We've eliminated 900 different diseases in animals that still plague people. Okay, and what is going on here? In humans, we only gain 6 months in longevity. In animals, we triple their lifespans. 900 species. Okay, what is going on here? Well, that's because all vertebrates require 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. It's one of those things where we have to use our training and our education to its maximum to get the best and maximum benefit from our good genes, to actually turn around our bad genes. This is called epigenetics. And myself and an Englishman by the name of Bruce Lipton, like Lipton tea, the two of us are considered the founders and the fathers of the science of epigenetics. And epigenetics says your genes will maximize their performance, okay, if you give them all 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. If you don't give your genes the 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids, bad things happen. You say, how can this happen? Grandma lived to be 120 and she was a hellion, did all these terrible things, did drugs and alcohol and smoked and so forth, did terrible things in the middle of the night you can't talk about in public, and she lived to be 120. And you're 18 years old and you try it and you die. And that's because you need the 90 essential nutrients she was getting because they lived in a place that had these nutrients in the soil, putting the wood ashes in the gardens, plowed in the silt every spring, and we don't have that advantage anymore. So you must supplement to get your maximum benefit. Let's look at, say, another common set of diseases. Autoimmune diseases. Doctors, will call things autoimmune if they don't know what causes it, and something they can treat the symptoms for, but they just can't get their arms around it and prevent it and get rid of it. Let's look at things like lupus and fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis. Lupus and fibromyalgia are kind of related, and they're actually caused by malabsorption. You got to get rid of the fried foods, processed meats, oils, and gluten, wheat, rye, and oats. Get on the 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. And guess what? Lupus and fibromyalgia go away very quickly. Rheumatoid arthritis is a secondary infection on top of bone-to-bone arthritis with a bug called mycoplasma, which is killable with an antibiotic called minocycline, like the little bait fish, minocycline, which is a member of the tetracycline family. And so you get rid of the bad foods, the fried foods, the processed meats, the oils, the glutens. You take your 90 essential nutrients and a little bit of the extra secret sauces to support and promote maintenance, repair of cartilage, ligaments, tendons, connective tissue, disc between the vertebrae. And you throw in the antibiotic called minocycline, kill that bug, allow the stem cells in our musculoskeletal system to support and promote maintenance and repair, and guess what? Your body will repair itself. These things are not monstrous autoimmune diseases your body's attacking itself. Okay, you have malabsorption problems. You live in a place where these certain nutrients are no longer found in optimal amounts. Your diet may be wanting. And so you supplement, get off all the bad stuff, and these problems go away. Okay, it's one of those things where it's predictable. We've been doing this for 40 years commercial. We know what to do here. Same way with simple osteoarthritis, degenerative arthritis, bone-to-bone arthritis. Before you go out and get double knee replacements, give the 90 essential nutrients and the secret sauces a try for 90 days. That will include the diet and so forth. Now, it's one of those things where things show up where you weren't looking for, but it just showed up and confirms what you've been saying. Just a couple of years ago, I think it was July of 2002, Harvard Medical School came out with a study where they looked at 300,000 records, not the individual patients, but 300,000 records of people who had double knee replacements the previous year. This is the orthopedic surgery department of Harvard Medical School. And they said that surgery for arthritis is useless and could be dangerous. That's the orthopedic surgery department of Harvard Medical School, July of 2002. It was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. It was abstracted in just about every newspaper in the world. 4 years later, they published another piece of that study in which they looked at the backs of these people that had these 300 records where they had double knee replacements. They looked at the backs of these people, and it was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in November of 2006. And they said, oh, back surgery for sciatica, peripheral neuropathy, back surgery for low back pain, bulging disc, those sorts of things are dangerous. Don't do them. Give us a chance. I find it interesting that people will get 5 bids to put a new roof on a house. They'll get 5 bids from construction companies to put sprinkler systems in their yards. And when there's something really major that a doctor wants to do to you, like back surgery or joint replacement, and he says, okay, we need to do this, you say, okay. I want everybody to say, I'm going to check with the university, Department of Orthopedic Surgery. I'm going to check with some other doctors in some other states who, would look at these records before I make my decision what we're going to do here. What will happen is you'll start getting better deals. Because doctors say, oh, I really want to do this for you. Okay, well, I want you to help me with these nutritional programs, protocols. I want you to monitor me and see how this goes. Okay? And then I'll stick with you. If you just insist on the double knee replacement and the back surgery, I'm going someplace else. You can go to Angie's List and see how many people complained about that particular doctor. In the old days, you had to go to the Better Business Bureau to kind of look at them, right? Let's look at kidney failure. Kidney failure, of course, occurs very commonly with high blood pressure, also occurs with diabetes, but it's a problem of its own. And when you get to kidney failure and dialysis, even if somebody hasn't urinated in 10 years, they are on dialysis, hemodialysis 6 days a week, it's totally reversible. Now, well, why don't doctors do that? Well, they don't get much training, maybe no training, in what I'm going to share with you here. Let's go back to the blood test for people with kidney failure and say, oh, your kidney's not filtering the blood, we got to put you on dialysis. That's like saying when you have a bathtub that's flooding into the bathroom, under the door, into the bedroom, okay, call a plumber, have him come out and replace the bathtub. Well, that's not the right thing because it'll keep flooding. What you really need is to get one of those Roto-Rooter companies to come out and Roto-Root out the willow roots out of the drain down the line. That's where the problem is. Well, the same thing is true when you have what they call kidney failure. What will happen is the kidneys aren't filtering the urine because they can't get, the kidneys aren't filtering the blood because they can't get the dirty blood into the filtering units, which are called glomeruli. Because the little arteries, little afferent arteries that carry the dirty blood into the filtering units are plugged. So, what we do, of course, is get rid of all the bad stuff that's caused inflammation in those arteries. Remember, no fried foods, no processed meats with nitrates and nitrites, no deli slices, sandwich meat, sausage, ham, bacon, bologna, salami, pastrami, pepperoni, jerky, corned beef, spam. Then absolutely no oils, no olive oil, no coconut oil, no margarines, mayonnaise, sulfurs, and cooking oils because they oxidize, turn into trans fats, heterocyclamines, and acrylamides, cause inflammation of those little arteries. And then, of course, no gluten, no wheat, brown, rye, and oats, so you can maximize the absorption of the nutrients. And the secret sauce, of course, is given with the 90 essential nutrients, 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. And the secret sauce here actually supports healthy blood flow through blocked arteries and also supports healthy blood pressure, all right, by supporting stem cells and your body's normal functions. Because remember, your genes, DNA, RNA, and telomeres require these 90 essential nutrients to do their job. You can have great physiology, but if you don't have these 90 essential nutrients, everything just goes into hibernation mode. So we have to give your genes, DNA, RNA, and telomeres all these 90 essential nutrients. Well, when you do that, the blood work begins to look pretty good. Suddenly now, the doctor says, I don't think we need to give you dialysis 6 days a week anymore. We can cut it back down to 4. And another couple of weeks or a month or so, he said, you know, we might be able to just cut it down to 3 like everybody else who's on dialysis. And then after another couple of months, you know, obviously you're urinating here now, and you haven't urinated in 10 years. People are excited about that. I've never seen so many people excited about urinating as people who haven't urinated in 10 years. Don't have to catheterize themselves, do all that stuff anymore. And then suddenly now, these little afferent arteries have been able to heal themselves, get the dirty blood into the filtering units, and the kidney function goes to perfectly normal. You're off of dialysis. You're adding many healthy years to your life. You're avoiding kidney transplants. On the other hand, I've seen people that have had 3 double kidney transplants. 3 kidney transplants where they had both kidneys transplanted, and then 2 years later, 2 kidneys transplanted again, 2 years later, transplanted. So I asked the patient, why did your doctor tell you? What did he tell you about having to get 3 double kidney transplants? He said, I have a genetic problem. No. Did he tell you to change your diet and supplement? Well, no, he didn't tell me to change my diet and supplement. Well, he's still getting damage to the new kidneys, and the arteries in the new kidneys, the inflammation from the fried foods, processed meats, oils, and gluten. And so you have to think about these very simple questions. Don't just accept the answer that, oh, it's a genetic problem. Don't accept that because it's not true. And so if we pay attention to these details, take the 90 essential nutrients, educate ourselves, educate our families, loan out, give away, sell the CDs, DVDs, the books. And again, I like epigenetics, rare earths and cures, immortality, dead doctors don't lie. If you need to lose weight, I'd get Hell's Kitchen and Energy Crisis. There's so many of these books. There's 14 of them. Okay, I urge you to get them all, read them, become a student of the information. And with Youngevity, you can actually get an income stream and legal tax breaks that you cannot get as an employee. When you're the best employee in the world, you don't get any tax breaks. You have to own your own little business. Nobody came to America to get a good job, except maybe in recent years, but in the old days when America was first starting and immigration all over the world started, people went there to be left alone. People went to these locations to have their own farms and ranches and to be independent and not an employee. Well, we need to go back to those days, and for the first 6 months to a year, as a Youngevity associate, your biggest income might be from your tax breaks and a return to you a significant amount of your withholdings. If you have a job and they're taking withholdings out, why would you want to give all your withholdings to the government when you get back a significant amount or all of it if you're actively working your Youngevity business and get legitimate tax breaks? I am so excited. I am so excited for you because of what's going on here. You know, we're publicly traded. We're in countries all over the world. We have warehouses in the Pacific area. I actually have several warehouses in the Pacific area, in New Zealand and Southeast Asia. We have a warehouse in Hong Kong. We have warehouses in Mexico. We have warehouses in the Middle East. We have warehouses in Canada, and certainly probably a dozen of them across the United States. And so we are really growing very rapidly. We need help. We pay well. We teach you how to run your business for nothing, okay? And we show you how to maximize your tax breaks so you can maintain and keep as much of your money as you can legally, okay? This is all legal. We don't want to take away the tax breaks of billionaires. We want to get the tax breaks of billionaires. If you take away the tax breaks of billionaires, you can't get them because they're not available to anybody. And of course, you want to get your families involved. You want them to know what you're doing, because if you spend 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years working in your Youngevity business, and then you want to retire, you die, you will your Youngevity business to your favorite grandson, your brother, your sister, your child, whoever it might be, It's a willable asset. Your job is not a willable asset. Your Youngevity business is a willable asset. And you will find that you can, in fact, pass this on down into your family for generation after generation after generation. You can't will your job for generation after generation after generation, but you can will your Youngevity business. And again, for the first 6 months to a year, your biggest asset in your Youngevity business is going to be your tax breaks as you're building up your cash flow. And so I want people to remind you, well, you can actually make a business plan. And in your business plan, say that your Youngevity business is going to pay for your monthly premiums for your health care, your monthly premiums for your life insurance, your monthly fitness center fees, because you want to be fit as a Youngevity associate. You can get your Youngevity business to pay for your requirements to be able to get a check from Youngevity as an associate. Okay, there are certain financial requirements you have to have, and in your business plan, which you put in the company file, you get a separate checking account. Don't mix and match your personal business, your personal income with your business income. You need a separate checking account. You need a separate credit card, and also a separate debit card. And so every month, you get a statement from your debit card company, your credit card company, your checking account from your bank, your savings account from the bank. You don't need a bookkeeper because you've already done your bookkeeping by having the separate accounts. That's how wonderful owning your own business is. Now we're going to call this to an end here. And I just want to again thank everybody who's been on this call to take this information out to their groups and associates and introduce it to new people. I want everybody to understand that we love you. We are Youngevity Nation, and we're all working as hard as we can. We're going to do more and more and more of these types of events where people all over the world can get on and share the information. I cannot thank you enough for all the wonderful things you've done. I cannot thank you enough in advance for all the wonderful things I know you're going to do. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. God bless you. Godspeed.